In this edition of Region Sports Desk, we're going to talk about Wheeler's improbable win over Andrean. And then, of course, we're going to give our picks for the sectional semifinal in all 5 classes in Northwest Indiana. Welcome to Region Sports Desk, JT and Bob, and Bob. First of all, let's talk about last week a little bit. Certainly, I guess the shot heard around the region and really all around the state was the Wheeler Bearcat upset at Father Eckert Field over Andrean.
Boy, oh boy, I'd like to know, outside of Union Township, if you're not a Wheeler alum outside of Union Township, seriously, did you guys think you were going to win? But let's be honest. Congratulations, Wheeler. Congratulations to Dan Plivzak. He just won Coach of the Year. I don't care unless somebody wins a state championship this year. He's got it wrapped up. And, well, we don't have Crow, so this will have to do.
Well, you think about it. I've obviously had a lot of talk on my page about this, a lot of discussion, and I keep hearing a lot of excuses. Well, we turned the ball over 8 times and we scored 12 points. Wheeler's offense did nothing. And they're right in some respects as far as Wheeler's offense. They struggled. They don't have a quarterback right now.
And we called it.
Okay, that's not a surprise to me, but they have the leading rusher in Northwest Indiana, Mason Zurich. Wheeler held him to 70 yards rushing.
And I heard he got banged up during the game too, from what I heard.
He was hurt for, I think he was just out for a few plays. He played most of that game. He had 16 carries for 70 yards. But really, it was Wheeler's defense that did the job. Andrean only got in scoring territory 1 time, and that was the lone touchdown they scored. They didn't. The closest they came the rest of the game was the 35-yard line. That was the last possession. When Jake Gord made that incredible interception in the ball game. So really, Wheeler's defense locked down Andrean all game long.
And again, they were, they did not break, and they were highly opportunistic. Let's be honest. You force 8 turnovers in a game, unless you're really, really bad, but you get 8 takeaways, you're going to win 99.9% of the time. So kudos to the Bearcats, and 59er Nation is probably, they're still stunned. I don't know. I know there are a lot of haters out there with Andrean that are glad, yeah. But I'm a Northwest Indiana football fan, and I'll be honest, I thought Andrean was our best shot, and it was a long shot at best because I still think Lawrence is the creme de la creme in Class 2A. But I really thought, though, Andrean represented Northwest Indiana's best shot of getting a state championship come Thanksgiving weekend. Now, we still got teams left. Wheeler's still left. Rensselaer's still left. We still got a couple of chances in 4A. 5A is going to be tough, but we're going to have to hang our hats on those respective schools and wish them the best, though. But, again, Wheeler, monster effort, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Congratulations, and I hope you continue to prove us wrong.
Let's move on to the semifinals of the sectionals. We'll start in sectional 33. I know all of our region teams were knocked out of this sectional, but this is a main sectional involving region schools. We're still going to talk about these matchups a little bit. We'll start South Newton hosting Winnemac, and really, both teams, Bishop Knoll and South Central kind of hung around in both games last week, but this game is in South Newton. It's going to be a tall task for Winnemac to go on the road again and beat South Newton this week.
Really, you think about it, and I believe South Newton waxed the floor with Winnemac the first time around this year. Of course, outside of Culver, this is a Midwestern Conference sectional with 3 teams from that Midwestern Conference. 28-0 was the first meeting of the year down in Kentland. And Winamac put together a very solid effort last week. Again, they were maddeningly inconsistent, though they won 4 out of their last 6 games. So Tim Ross Ball Club's kind of been playing a little better here in the second half of the season. But we saw going in, South Newton was probably the favorite in this sectional. And I think they're going to take care of business down at Kentland Friday night.
I think you're absolutely right. Not only do I think South Newton is a better football team, but I think as far as Winamac's concerned, it's going to be hard 2 consecutive weeks making 2 very long road trips in a row. And don't get me wrong, South Central gave Winamac a pretty good fight. But
now you add on about 45 minutes to that drive.
Yeah, now you're going to go on the road again.
You're almost going to Illinois pretty much.
So I mean, I think that's going to be a little bit too much. And South Newton proved the first time around. I mean, with a 20-0 shutout, they were the better ball club. I'm going to stick with that. I still think South Newton gets it done. Culver hosting West Central, and as you pointed out, it is a rematch from the first week of the regular season, a game which Culver defeated West Central 26-21. Pretty impressive win for West Central last week. Whiting's been playing pretty well over the last few weeks, and West Central just waxed the floor with Whiting 39-7. But having to go on the road again to Culver, remember Culver has been in that sectional final the last 2 years. What do you think of West Central's chances on the road at Culver?
Well, West Central had a nice bounce back. After it being really up and down, they had a great start, up and down. Last week they took care of White. They're taking out a Culver team that probably week in, week out plays better competition. Yeah, West Central got them week 1. It was only 26-21, but again, we talked about this last week. Look at the losses for Culver. They lost to West Central at home. We'll get another crack at the Trojans on their home field Friday night. They have a 7-point loss to Bremen, who's still undefeated. They lost to Jimtown, still playing. They lost to Glenn, still playing. I sense a pattern. And I think Culver, this is one of those teams in recent years that they play a tough schedule and it gets them ready for this sectional. I mean, the Midwestern Conference team, we're going to get. Culver's another one of those smash mouth teams. The Hendrickson kid back at quarterback is a very solid talent. Obviously, losing Michael Salary from graduation a year ago, that's a big difference. But Culver playing on their home field, I think they get revenge, and I think they're going back to a sectional final.
I'm going to have to agree with you on this pick as well, and I think you really hit it on the head. The schedule that Culver's played over the course of the season has done them well, and they had an impressive win over Tri-County last week. And I realized that West Central took care of Whiting, but now West Central's got to make that trip to Culver. Culver's a tough place to play. I think when you compare the two teams and you compare the schedules, it's not even close. I mean, Culver's ready. Culver's ready for this matchup. I think they do get revenge. Let's move up to Class 2A, Sectional 25. We'll start our first matchup. River Forest hosting North Newton. And of course, this is a Greater South Shore Conference rematch from earlier in the season when River Forest made that trip down to Morocco and defeated North Newton by a couple of scores. River Forest has been on fire lately.
Who might have been the second happiest person in Northwest Indiana to see Andrea get knocked out? Jeff B.
Yeah?
Really, you think we talked about last week, River Forest, okay, we thought Andrea was going to beat Wheeler. River Forest would get to the final, that would be it. But now, when you're considering the first matchup, and of course we'll talk about the Rensselaer-Wheeler game in just a few short moments, but River Forest now, I think you got to look at it from what happened last week, looking now, hey, we might get to a sectional final. You might actually put them in the mix of actually winning a sectional championship this year. Now, granted, Wheeler is still going to be the 800-pound gorilla, but don't forget. And we saw what the job River Forest's defense did against Wheeler the first time around. They knocked Nick Nesbinsky out for the season and did a pretty decent job of trying to contain Robert Hurd for about 2.5 quarters before Wheeler exploded there in the second half of the game that was called with about 6 minutes left in the game. But River Forest and North Newton, these teams played a few weeks ago, 34-21. River Forest got the job done in Morocco. This time, the game will be in New Chicago. Can the Spartans close the gap? Maybe a little bit, but I think River Forest is going to find a way to get it done at home and go to their first sectional final in 11 years.
I think what really got my attention last week was North Newton struggling the way they did with Boone Grove. Boone Grove was in that ball game really up until the last couple of minutes, it was a very tight game, and finally North Newton was able to break away at the very end. But really, I think Boone Grove giving them so much trouble, at North Newton, I think that's a little bit of a concern. And really, River Forest, yeah, they've been on a roll. I mean, when you think about some of the teams they've beaten, Whiting, South Central, and then now they took care of their rival Lake Station.
Again,
those are huge games. Two of those games are huge rivalry games for River Forest. And you consider the season that they're having, 7-3. I think this team is destined to make the sectional final. I think River Forest is going to win this by a couple of scores. I like the Ingots at home against North Newton. And this is one of the bigger games of the week, and one of the bigger talked about games of the week. Wheeler hosting Rensselaer, and of course, yeah, we're going to have that
game.
Have it. I'll have that game on Mid-America Broadcast. So for those of you that are locked out of the gate that can't get in, listen to us. We're going to have that call.
Yeah, you and Andy will have a great call. I'm pretty sure of it.
And it's going to be packed. That place, it's going to be to capacity crowd, no question about it. Certainly Rensselaer not having the season they've had the last couple of years, but we know anytime Rensselaer and Wheeler lock up, you can forget about. I don't care if Rensselaer's 5-5, they always play Wheeler tough no matter what.
Here's the word for this matchup: Wheeler must avoid letdown. Letdown, letdown, letdown. I'm sure Coach Klimzak is preaching it all week in practice. Avoid the letdown. Yes, you beat Andrean. Now you're expected, but now you got the team that has knocked them out of the tournament the last 3 years in the Rensselaer Central Bombers. And really, you look at it, the way this trend has gone here. Actually, they did
2 years.
Yeah, the last 2 years they did not play in 2008. But you look at it, 2 years ago, 21-18, where I think Rensselaer just held on the ball for about a quarter and a half. I think to help kill the clock there. And last year, 28-0, shutting out Sham O'Shea and company. So letdown is going to be the key word. But I think with the bad taste in the mouth for the Bearcats the last 2 years, plus also this time Rensselaer has to go to Union Township because the last couple of years they've had to go down to Rensselaer. This is going to be a heck of a game. Rensselaer has played a tougher schedule. Of course, you heard this before last week with Andrean. The problem with Rensselaer we talked about this year in or all year, they've had trouble putting points on the board. Last week, 52 points was only the third time this year that they scored over 28 points in a game this year. They've struggled to put points on the board. Wheeler can be nasty defensive with those takeaways. I think it's going to be a competitive game, but Wheeler, being at home, gets a little payback with the last 2 years, and I look for the Bearcats to advance.
I think when I look at this particular matchup, certainly after Wheeler beat Andrean, you can think, well, maybe they might have a letdown. But this game, I think this game
It's a perfect game.
I think this means even more to Wheeler than Andrean, given what Rensselaer has done to Wheeler over the years. They've knocked them, I think, like 4 or 5 times, over the 10, 11-year history of Wheeler's football program. Rensselaer has probably knocked them out of the tournament more than any other team.
2010, 2009, 2005, 2003, 2002. There you go. So 5 times the last
5 times,
game.
Okay?
Nice call, JT.
5 times. So I think there's not going to be a letdown. I think they're going to be even more fired up for this game because this is, I think the program's going to believe that they've truly arrived if they win this ball game. So they're going to be gunning for the Rensselaer Central Bombers. I think a problem that Rensselaer is going to have, not only, they're not a very dynamic offense, but they're still very, very young. Remember, they only had a couple starters from last year's team on this year's squad. That's hurt them in some games. They've given up some high point totals, and they have struggled scoring points. I think Wheeler's offense is going to be a little more dynamic in this ball game. They're not going to have 20 yards of total offense like they did against Andrean.
And really, think about it too. They're playing Andrean last week. That was arguably, unless they get into a major run, that's probably going to be the best defense they're going to see all tournament long. I'm not sure. I think they're Andrean had
Lures.
But even then, Lures with the stat-wise, they give up yardage because of the teams they play in the Summit Athletic Conference. But if they get to that point, it'll probably be the best defense they see. And also, too, you know what's coming with Wheeler. They're running Wildcat pretty much 99% of the time now with Robert Hurd and everything. You know it's coming. Can you stop it? The Bombers, I just don't think have the size in the trenches and the playmakers on defense that Andrean has. And again, I think wrestlers have had their troubles putting points on the board. I look for, it's going to be a competitive game. I think Rensselaer will score, but I see this being maybe a 27-7 type ball game in Union Township.
Well, yeah, Rensselaer thinks that Wheeler's going to run Wildcat. I have a feeling. I have a feeling Wheeler might have a little surprise for Rensselaer, and if you read into that, you might figure out what I'm talking about. So I think if Wheeler's a little more dynamic offensively, this game could get ugly. I mean they might be able to put up 5 touchdowns in this game if their offense is a little more dynamic. I think I'm gonna stick with what you're saying. Yeah, maybe a 27-7 type game. I think Rensselaer might be able to get on the board, but Wheeler is going to be too much. This is the year of the Bearcat. It's been Rensselaer the last couple of years. I think Wheeler's a team of destiny. Wheeler's going to get it done. Let's move up to Sectional 17. I realize all 3 of our region participants were eliminated, but this is still the dominant 3A sectional as far as region teams go, so we'll still talk about it. First game, we'll talk about Culver Academy hosting South Bend St. Joe. And, Culver Academy, they've kind of been up and down. I mean, they have a 3-game winning streak. We know how good St. Joe's been all season. They represented the 3A North in the state championship last year, and really, they haven't missed a beat all season. And
I think they played the second half last week at Lou Wallace with a running clock, because that game was over real quick.
Yeah, it was.
In Glen Park, though. But South Bend St. Joe 8-2, lost back-to-back games earlier in the year with Mishawaka, Marion, and Penn. I think the key for Ben Downey, the head coach, they know potentially Mishawaka, Marion is lurking next week. You can't overlook a Culver Ball Club. That again, they're 5-5, but they played a couple of decent games. They have a win over Heritage Christian. They played really, you think about it, arguably one of the best games Lafayette Central Catholics had all year. They held up to 21 points. So they're only giving up 19 points a game.
They only lost by 4 to Churubusco, who's undefeated right now.
Yeah, and that's a 1A or 2A school rather. 3-touchdown win over Sheridan. But South Bend St. Joe, with that experience from a year ago, going down to Oliver Field, I just think it's going to be too much for Andy Garrell's ball club. I look for the Indians to advance.
Yeah, I look at some of those wins they've had on the season. They beat Mishawaka in week 3. They beat Chesterton the first week of the season, and then you go down the line.
Decent win over Clay.
Clay was a pretty good one. I mean, they've beaten some solid, legitimate ball clubs, and really, they might actually be a better team right now than they were last year. Just by terms of their record, I think St. Joe comes in. I think they get the job done. I think they're going to win this by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns. I like St. Joe to win this game pretty big. Second game, and this might be a more interesting matchup. Mishawaka Marion hosting John Glenn. Both teams 8-2. Marion has played a tougher schedule. Not to say that Glenn hasn't played anybody, but Marion's played a pretty difficult schedule. Certainly John Glenn is one of the better backs in northern Indiana, and Josh Anderson. The question is, are they going to be able to be a little bit more dynamic in this ball game? Certainly they're a run-heavy football team, but is John Glenn going to be able to throw the football a little bit and keep Mishawaka Marion on their heels defensively?
This game reminds me of the Glenn Andrian matchup from last year in the sectional final, where Glenn, with the Anderson kid at halfback, dynamic rushing attack, but they were awfully small in the trenches. The Marion's got some good size up front. That's the one thing, if I'm Glenn coach Justin Begonia, that concerns me a bit heading to Mishawaka to take on the Marion Knights. Very solid effort this year, losing to Penn, a 3-point loss to Clay. Also wins over Washington and St. Joe, and a big win over Mishawaka at the tail end of the regular season. I think all sides point to the Knights here in this one. I like Marion.
Have to agree. I definitely have to take Marion, but let's keep something in mind. The 2 games that John Glenn lost this year. I mean, it's combined 5 points in both ball games. So I mean, even the games that they did lose, they were right there. They had a chance to win both of those games. I think Glenn can hang around for a while, but I think you're right. I think the size and the physicality of Marion is going to win in the end. I think think it's going to give them an advantage. I think in the fourth quarter is when you're going to see John Glenn start to wear down. I think Marion's going to pull away. They might
like a 28-14 type.
Yeah, I could see something like that. I think in the fourth quarter, Marion pulls away and they get the W. Let's move on to sectional 10. We had two of our three region participants have already been eliminated. Both Lowell and KV lost last week, but Hobart was able to defeat South Bend Clay and what would be seen as kind of an upset on the road at Clay. And they're going to be playing South Bend, Washington. We know how dynamic South Bend, Washington is, and you're going to find out how dynamic they are.
I tell you what.
Because you're going to be having their game on MAB this Friday night, which it's an intriguing matchup.
Yeah, it was a good win. South Bend, Washington, only for comparison, they played Clay in week 6 and only had a 2-point win, 21-19. Hobart last week beat Clay 24-20. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. Washington's got athletes up the wazoo. We all know about Garrett Dieter, who I think has got about 1,600 yards rushing and 18 touchdowns this year. Had that national record performance against Elkhart Central earlier this season. Hobart is getting healthy at the right time, plus also being at home. I think this is going to be a heck of a game. I thought Hobart was going to keep it close last week against Clay. And not only did they keep it close, they win. I didn't pick the win, but at least they kept it close. But that does count as a win. Boy, I don't know how to go with this matchup, man. What do you think?
It's, I think with Washington, they're all over the place.
I know.
I mean, they kept the game, they kept it very competitive with Penn.
They scored 46 on a Bloomington North team. That's probably one of the better teams in the southern half of 5A.
And look, but then South Bend Adams, they win 12-7. I mean, their offense did almost nothing. So it's so hard to gauge, what Washington team's going to show up. I think a lot of it is going to gauge on their quarterback. Their quarterback has been kind of inconsistent. Mm-hmm. So if he's having an off night and he's not very accurate throwing the football, Hobart might have a chance in this game. And really, when you think about it, Hobart has Anthony Burgos. He's their best athlete. They're going to have to try to lock down Dieter with him, I think.
And they actually had the secondary for Hobart actually had a pretty good game last week against Clay.
So I think that they need to lock down Dieter with Burgos. I think he's about as good of an athlete as Dieter. Maybe keep a safety over the top, of course. But
and Byron Randall's back healthy too, and that's a big help too for Ryan Turner's ball club.
But I think offensively, Hobart needs to get Burgos the ball, get it into his hands, try to find different ways to give him the ball, whether it be some screens, maybe even give him a few handoffs, even some toss plays, anything to get him the football. He's their best athlete. I still think Washington's going to come in there. I think it's going to be a good ball game. The key, I think, is going to be for Hobart to start strong. If they get behind by a couple scores early, this game will get ugly. But if they can hold their own and weather the storm early, get the crowd going, Hobart will have a chance to win. I'm still going to pick South Bend Washington to come away with a victory because I still think they're a better ball club. When they're clicking, they're one of the best teams in the northern half in 4A. They're good enough that they could potentially get to a state championship because of their talent. I think the talent's going to overwhelm Hobart. I'm taking South Bend Washington.
I think another thing that's going to factor for Washington too, they're going to be playing on artificial turf too, so that's going to be a huge thing. But the thing is, Washington has been maddeningly inconsistent. Which Washington team is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that put 46 points on the board against Bloomington North, put up 40 against KV, or the team that struggled to beat South Bend Adams 12-7? I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to take the Brickies to shock Washington. I'm going to say 21-20 Brickies.
I hope you're right.
I hope so too. But you need to catch up. I'm taking a risk.
All right, I need that. Yeah.
I know, but
hey, I'm picking Washington. But hey, I want Hobart to win the football game. I hope they come out and they.
I think it's going to be an interesting game. Again, Washington's just been so inconsistent this year, and I mean, you look at it. Yeah, they only beat Adams 12-7, but also a good loss to Penn, 17-6. I mean, that's an undefeated.
And they crushed Mishawaka last week of the regular season too.
And you saw Mishawaka last week in person. That's not a bad ball club either. But I just don't. I don't know what get with the Kelly Green and White, man. I just don't know. That's why, and also, kids on a road trip, about an hour and 15 minutes. from a different time zone, that could be a huge factor too. Sometimes you don't know how they're going to play coming off a loss.
Second game in Sectional 10, Mishawaka hosting South Bend Riley. This is a rematch from earlier in the regular season. Really, this was one of Mishawaka's better defense performances.
The only team that not score over 14 points all year on this Mishawaka team. By the way, what did you think of Sam Schrader? I know your first look at him in person last week, that Mishawaka quarterback.
He's decent. He's good. He's solid at running the offense. Really, I think the player that impressed me more was Danny Eggleston. He's a wingback. He had a tremendous game, and really, anytime he was able to get out on the perimeter, he was causing all kinds of problems for Lowell's defense. But I'll tell you what, Mishawaka's defense really stepped up to the plate. That was probably what impressed me the most, because when you talk about a team that's been giving up almost 30 points a game on average, their defense really shut down Lowell's offense. They're going to shut down South Bend Riley this week. I could see another 35-7 game. I think Mishawaka's going to coast into the sectional championship.
Yeah, the Riley's only averaging about 15 points a game during the season. Last week, 27.1 in a win over New Prairie. Second highest point total this year. The only other team they scored more than that was against Gavin earlier in the season. I look for Mishawaka to take care of business.
Move up to Sectional 9 for a first matchup. This is a really intriguing matchup because certainly you know a little bit about this. Eric Schreiber, obviously, from Griffith. He's now bringing his Hammond Ball Club into the Boneyard.
I'm going to go out on a limb, JT. A Wishbone team's going to win this game. You know how I love to go out on that limb,
I don't know, kind of talking crazy over there, but you might be onto something.
I love to go out on that limb, folks.
I know how much you love that Wishbone offense.
Lovely.
Griffith, Hammond. Let's remember what Hammond has an 8-2 record. Well, let's remember something. When Hammond played the two best teams on their schedule, they struggled offensively scoring points, and their defense gave up a lot of points. Griffith is just as good. You talk about Lowell and Morton. They're right there in the mix with those ball clubs. I think the way Griffith has been playing the last few weeks, this team is one of those teams you don't really want to play right now. I think it's going to be trouble for Hammond if they can't throw the football. I like Griffith to win this one pretty handily.
Have you realized the most points Griffith's allowed in a game this year is only 21? Only 3 teams have scored 20 or more points on it. Morton scored 21, and Drayton scored 20, and East Chicago scored 20.
That's impressive.
And Griffith, who in years past has had some issues on the defensive side of the ball, that's probably one of their better defensive efforts they've had all year. And let's be honest, this Griffith Ball Club probably for the better part of 4 weeks has been practicing with one thing in mind. Next week against the Morton Governors. You know it. I know it. Roy Richards knows it. The Panther fans know it. Sorry, Eric Schreiber. I know I went to high school with you, and you've done a heck of a job your first year at the helm of the Wildcats, but I think Griffith takes care of business, and it's very, very rare to see a Griffith team line up against another team that runs the wishbone, so they know what's coming or whatnot, because they see it every day in practice. So Griffith takes care of business. I'm going to say probably 42-14 type game.
Our next game, the Morton Governors hosting East Chicago, and I'll tell you what, you got to give a lot of credit to Stacey Adams and his crew. They've had a tremendous season. I mean, really,
7 wins
ever since the first 2 weeks of the season.
And who called it?
Well, Bob Patowski called it. Okay. And really, I've been impressed with some of the point totals that they put up, and they gave Griffith a game for a half. Griffith pulled away in the second half. They had them tied 20-20 at half in the last week of the regular season. They won a wild game over Highland last week. But this is a team that they have a lot of confidence. They run a wide open offense. They're kind of similar to Morton in some respects. You expect this to maybe be a high-scoring game.
Boy, I tell you what, you gave up 40 points to Highland last week. We just had trouble. They've given up 95 points the last 2 weeks. Yeah, they have a dynamic offense, but remember what I just said about Griffith's been practicing for Morton? Well, guess what? The last probably 3-4 weeks, Roy Richards and that staff have been practicing for Griffith. You know it. I know it. Russ Recchi knows it. And it looks like, wow, I'm surprised you didn't pay that red and silver this week, man.
No, I was thinking about it, but
or at least put a big block M on it.
I don't know. I don't know. I could do something, you know. Maybe get some cardboard. And,
Anyhow.
Well, you know,
the cheese is never wrong. Well,
yeah,
unless you're picky mustard.
Yeah. Well, Munster's not involved in this, and I'll tell you what. It's been a nice season for East Chicago, but we all know what happens when I bring this cheesehead out. Your season, it was great, but unfortunately the Morton Governors are going to move on to the sectional championship. There's nothing stopping this. It's going to happen. Griffith and Morton, they're going to lock up next Friday night. Morton is going to take care of business at home over East Chicago. Not really much to talk about Sectional 2. Obviously LaPorte was knocked out last week. I only have 3 words for you. Pen, pen, pen. That's about all that needs to be said about Sectional 2.
Really? No, you know what they say? The pen is mightier than the sword.
It's mightier than the rest of Sectional 2, that's for sure. But let's move up to Sectional 1. First game we'll talk about Chesterton and Maryville. And Chesterton, I think, is finally starting to get healthy. They got their quarterback back. They had a nice win last week over Michigan City. They're taking on Maryville, who has just been on fire the last few weeks. You know, and obviously, you know, they won a hard-fought battle with Lake Central last Friday night.
Great game, by the way. It was a heck of a game.
That sounded like it. It was close to the very end.
And I got news. I know that a lot of the LC fans are crying sour grapes or whatnot. They're saying, oh, we had 10 penalties. They only had 3. Oh, this kid all of a sudden gets transferred. Lake Central fans, I know you've had a great year, but let me tell you something. If David Yancey doesn't get hurt in the middle of the 4th quarter, it's you guys playing Chesterton this week. Because Maryville had no answer. They were not stopping him on that drive. He gets hurt. Next thing you know, Lake Central cannot move the ball. They have to punt it away. And let's not forget, you know, Maryville did not score on the first play after they got the punt. They ran the same play twice in a row. The first time, they stopped Dylan Collins. The second time, he followed his blocker and goes for 82 yards. And let's not forget, too, Maryville lost Courtney Berry during the first half of that game last week, too. And he's a valuable two-way performer. Collins got shaken up during the course of that game, was able to go back. I don't know if Courtney Berry's going to be available to play this week. Talking to some members of the Maryville staff afterwards, they say he's got an MCL sprain. So that could be a huge loss for the Pirates, though. And Maryville won despite not completing the pass in the second half last week, too. Granted, it was a heck of a game. I think the better team won, but Lake Central, you have nothing to hang your heads on. You guys are going to be outstanding shape again in 2012.
When you look at this game, this is, and we kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago when Chesterton and Maryville locked up in week 9. This is a matchup that Chesterton typically struggles with over the years. You know, Maryville has had the best of this matchup, and really, as of late, you know, Maryville is playing their best football. Regardless of you know, having a transfer come in, their team has been playing very good football over the last few weeks. They're starting to look like the Maryville team that I think we expected them to be. And Chesterton, over the last few weeks, they've been struggling. They got a good draw. Being able to play Michigan City first round, I think that was huge for Chesterton to just get some confidence and get a W. But I gotta think Maryville is, you know, they're firing on all cylinders. They got so many weapons.
And that's what they did 2 weeks ago against Chesterton. That was how much yardage they had.
569 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to lose that many games when you get over 500 yards of offense. Yeah. What was it? 35-21 final score.
Yeah. And now in that game, Katzfars came in the second half, and the Trojans were able to move the ball. But by the time he came in, it was a 28-7 type dog. He was able to put a couple touchdowns on the board there in the second half. But I just think Maryville is rolling right now. It's a great 1-2 punch with Peppers and Collins in the backfield. Yes, Courtney Berry, I don't know how long he's going to be out, though, but with an MCL sprain, that might be a week-to-week situation. But still, that being said, Maryville going on the road, I like the Bucks' chances, and I like the Bucks.
Totally agree. Maryville's going to get it done. Maybe Chesterton can make it a game for a while, but Maryville, there's so much talent on that squad, and they're playing their best football at the right time.
And they're young too.
Maryville,
most part.
I think Maryville's going to get it done, get into that sectional championship, and that's a familiar place for the Maryville Pirates, being in that sectional championship.
I think last year was the first time they were not in a sectional final, I want to say, since 2002.
Yep, you're completely correct.
Yeah. So they're working out a nice little, well, trying to start a new streak, I should say.
Yeah, it was 7
Not like
years
the Griffith streak of 21 in a row, but still, we'll see if they can start a new one.
Well, the final game, sectional 1, Crown Point hosting Valpo, and I think really the biggest news and really unfortunate news from last week was their quarterback Joe Hopman. He was injured. He's not going to return for the remainder of the playoffs. That's really unfortunate for him. He's a senior. He's been a 3-year starter. He's been a
solid quarterback.
Yeah, he's been an important piece of Crown Point's team over the last 3 years. They're going to be hosting Valpo, and we kind of know the story with Valpo. They're playing for their coach, and at any point this could all be over for Mark Hoffman. So certainly there's a lot of emotion to this game, and really you go the last 2 years. I mean, this matchup has been. I mean, this could be, even without Joe Hoffman, this could still be the game of the week in Northwest Indiana. This could be the game that comes down to the wire, like most of the games have over the last couple of years.
Well, I'm just looking up to see, because we did the first matchup on MAB. Valpo won that game 21-14. Crown Point left a lot of points in the red zone. They were only just 2 of 5 in that game. That was really also the coming out party for Andrew Kittredge, and he came back from his injury with a couple of touchdowns. But Valpo was up 21-0 at halftime this game, did not have a first down the whole second half, and they held out for dear life to win 21-14. In that game also, Hoffman put the ball in the air 41 times. Now, with the backup quarterback whose name is escaping me for Crown Point, they're not going to put 41 passes. I think Tristan Peterson really has stepped up to take the bulk of the work here with the injury to Jake Lindemann. But
I think that's another question.
Yeah.
Is Lindemann going to be healthy?
Well, they haven't really needed him the last couple of weeks.
But well, I mean, because think about it. Crown Point, I don't think they're going to be spreading it out, throwing it all over the place. It would be a huge help if Lindemann was healthy and they had that 1-2 punch, where they're just going to, try to pound the football and win with their defense. So that's going to be a huge factor if he's going to be healthy.
Yeah, and Crown Point's been very good defensively all year. We talked about Andrean, we talked about Griffith played solid defense, but Crown Point this year, they've been really stingy themselves defense. This is the defense, they're only giving up just over 10 points a game. They said they'll have 26 on them. Only 2 other teams have scored 20 or more points, and they've held teams to single digits or less in, trying to see here, we're doing some quick math here, 610 games this year. So this Bulldog defense has been really good, and they're going to have to be on their A game Friday night to overcome the loss of Joe Hopman. Now, in the first half, Valpo moved the ball at will, but I think in the second half, Crown Point made some adjustments. They only held Valparaiso to about 30-some-odd yards of offense. I think this is going to be another typical Valpo Crown Point slugfest. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but I just think if the Bulldogs had Joe Hopman, they would be in position to win this game. But I'm going to say Valpo on a late field goal, 16-13 at Bulldog turf.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with you on almost everything you said. I think losing Hopman is huge because Crown Point's going to be less dynamic. They've got some great weapons on the outside, but I think, considering, you've got your backup quarterback, you're throwing him into a really tough situation. Having to play Valpo, Valpo's not having a great year. They're still okay, and considering it's the playoffs, it's do or die. It's a really tough situation for a backup quarterback to be in, and I think Crown Point's going to come in with a more conservative approach. They want to, protect him and make his life a little bit easier. Try to give him some easy throws, maybe a few play actions. Just try to give him some confidence. But I think with that conservative approach, Valpo is going to be able to do their part defensively to hold down Crown Point's offense. And you're right, with most of these matchups being low-scoring games, of the last few games between these two teams, it's going to be the same way. And I think Kittredge has really come on strong the last few weeks. I think Kittredge is going to be able to wear down Crown Point's defense eventually. Valpo's playing with a lot of motion as well for their head coach. I think they're going to get Mark Hoffman one more victory. I think Valpo is going to get into the sectional championship game and play Maryville.